Ready for a deep dive? We're tackling international chemical trade, and trust me, it's a wild ride.
Absolutely. We're talking about being an import-export specialist in the chemical world, and luckily, RoleCatcher gave us all the intel.
They really break it down, from those tricky customs regulations to how AI is shaking things up. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's start with the basics. What does an import-export specialist in chemicals actually do?
More than just pushing paper, that's for sure. It's about being that vital link in the global supply chain. Think of it like you're the conductor of an orchestra, making sure those chemical shipments are hitting all the right notes.
So you're dealing with a lot of moving parts then.
Constantly, from navigating those complex customs regulations to becoming a master of documentation. It's a fast-paced world, and you've got to be on top of it all.
Hold on, rewind a bit. Customs regulations. That sounds pretty broad. We're talking about chemicals here. What's the big deal?
Right. It's not like shipping out teddy bears. Chemicals, they have a mind of their own. You're dealing with hazardous materials, unique handling needs, and those regulations. Let's just say they change more often than... Well, you get the picture.
Okay, so staying updated is key. You can't just memorize a rule book and call it a day.
Exactly. And that's where that specialized knowledge of chemicals comes in. An import-export specialist in this field, they've got to be fluent in safety data sheets, international chemical codes. They're the chemical whisperer, making sure everything's safe and compliant.
It's a huge responsibility.
Absolutely. But with big responsibility comes, big rewards. RoleCatcher highlighted the high earning potential and the international travel. That's got to be music to our ambitious listeners' ears.
Oh, for sure. Those perks sound amazing. But what do they really mean for someone just starting out?
It means a career path with serious growth potential. Forget those dead-end jobs. This is a field where you can climb the ladder, see real progress in your paycheck. Think performance bonuses, exceeding industry standards. It's within reach.
And the travel. That's not just a perk. It's practically a job requirement.
Right. Imagine this. You're in Europe, negotiating a major deal for specialized chemicals, then hopping on a plane to South America to, oversee a delivery. Talk about a global office.
Sign me up. But I'm guessing it's not all glamorous business trips and fat paychecks. There've got to be some downsides.
Right. Well, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. RoleCatcher's honest about that. Be ready for long hours, unexpected problems. It's a fast-paced environment where you're juggling multiple shipments, dealing with delays, and always staying ahead of those ever-changing regulations.
So organization is key.
Absolutely. And a bit of a problem-solving attitude wouldn't hurt either, because when things go wrong, and they will, you need to be able to think on your feet and find solutions fast.
And this is where technology comes in, right? The guide mentioned things like blockchain and automation really changing the game. Speaking of tech hiccups, I once read about this case where...
Hold on. Before we jump into that, let's make sure our listener understands why these technologies are so revolutionary for the chemical world. Imagine this. You're responsible for a shipment of, let's say, sensitive pharmaceutical ingredients heading overseas. With blockchain, every step of that journey, every single detail is recorded securely and transparently. Any delay, even a slight temperature change, you and everyone in the supply chain are instantly in the loop.
Okay, so it's like having this super detailed, tamper-proof digital logbook for every shipment. That adds another layer of security and makes things much more efficient.
Exactly. And when you're dealing with products as sensitive as chemicals, that level of transparency and traceability is crucial.
Okay, that makes sense. So blockchain is like the security guard. And what about automation? Where does that fit in?
Think of automation like your super efficient assistant. It takes over all those tedious, repetitive tasks.
Okay, so instead of drowning in paperwork.
Exactly. Automation swoops in, takes care of those customs declarations, generates invoices, even tracks those shipments in real time. You're freed up to focus on the bigger picture.
So less time with spreadsheets, more time for strategy and building those all-important relationships. Makes sense. But let's talk about the human element. What about the skills you need to really thrive in this field? RoleCatcher had a whole list, but what are we talking about? Especially for someone specializing in chemicals.
It's interesting. They highlight soft skills as much as those technical ones. We're talking communication, problem solving, being a master of active listening.
Well, yeah, you're dealing with people all the time, right? From clients to suppliers
Yeah.
to those government agencies.
It's a global network, and how you navigate those relationships is crucial. Imagine a shipment's delayed, regulations shifted overnight. It's how you communicate that, how you negotiate, how you listen to those concerns. That's what sets you apart. And in the chemical industry, clear communication, it's not just good business, it's crucial for safety.
Right. One wrong number, one miscommunication could have serious consequences.
Exactly. So those soft skills, they're not just nice to haves, they're essential. But of course, you also need that solid foundation of technical knowledge.
Knowing your way around a chemical, so to speak.
Precisely. RoleCatcher was very clear about that. Knowledge of chemical-specific regulations, it's a must-have. We're talking about hazardous materials, strict handling requirements. You need to understand those safety data sheets, the international codes, and be ready to tackle any compliance issues head-on.
It's almost like being a detective, making sure everything adds up.
That's a great way to put it. You've got to be detail-oriented, analytical, always thinking a few steps ahead. But let's say you've got the skills, you're a pro at navigating regulations. What does the actual career ladder look like? How do you move up in this world?
Yeah, where do you even begin?
RoleCatcher paints a pretty clear picture. You might start in an entry-level position, assisting senior specialists, getting to grips with the ins and outs of documentation and logistics.
So a lot of learning on the job.
Absolutely. It's like an apprenticeship. Then, as you gain experience, you might move into roles where you're managing shipments, coordinating with suppliers, maybe even developing those import-export strategies.
So you work your way up, from rookie to running the show.
That's the idea. Eventually, you could be leading a team, overseeing those international partnerships, even shaping the entire company's global trade strategy. And don't underestimate the power of networking, finding mentors who can guide you.
Speaking of landing that dream job, let's talk about the interview. RoleCatcher provided some killer interview questions to get us prepped. Want to dive into a few?
Let's do it. I always say knowing the questions is like getting a sneak peek at the test.
Exactly. One that stood out to me, they asked, how do you stay up to date on the latest regulations and trends impacting chemical import-export? Talk about a loaded question. They want to know you're really in tech.
It's all about showing them you're not just knowledgeable, but a lifelong learner. This is where you talk about those industry publications you subscribe to, the webinars you attend, maybe you're part of a professional organization. Show them you're passionate about staying ahead of the curve.
So it's not enough to just keep up. You've got to be genuinely curious. Right?
Exactly. Another question they threw out there was, can you describe a challenging situation you faced related to chemical import-export and how you resolved it? Classic interview move.
Tell us about a time you messed up, but make it impressive question.
Exactly. This is where you showcase those problem-solving skills and that in-depth knowledge we talked about. Maybe you had a shipment held up in customs, mislabeled chemicals. How did you navigate that? It's not just about the problem, but how you tackled it, the communication, the solution.
This is your time to shine. Show them you can think on your feet and know those regulations inside and out. Okay, so you've aced the interview. You're a rock star candidate. Let's talk about standing out in a crowded job market. RoleCatcher's AI-powered features promise to give job seekers an edge. What's the deal with that?
Think of it less robot recruiters and more like having a superpowered assistant helping you navigate that job search maze.
Okay, I like the sound of that. Sign me up. So how does it work?
Remember when we talked about tailoring your CV for each job description? Well, RoleCatcher's AI analyzes job postings for those hidden keywords, those key skills employers crave. Then it suggests ways to tweak your CV to match, making sure you're speaking their language.
It's like having a personal brand manager for your career. Amazing. What about getting noticed by potential employers? Is AI going to hand-deliver my resume?
Not quite. But their AI does analyze your profile and then plays matchmaker, connecting you with relevant openings you might not have found on your own. It's all about maximizing your visibility and making sure you're on the radar of the right companies.
It's like a shortcut through the system, especially in today's competitive landscape.
Absolutely. But while these AI tools can definitely boost your chances, it's important to remember they're just tools. Your skills, experience, and passion, those are what seal the deal.
Right, technology can open those doors, but you have to be ready to walk through them.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to something pretty big picture. Have you ever thought about how technology might radically change the entire import-export world down the line, especially when it comes to something as vital as chemicals? It really makes you think, doesn't it? We've talked about blockchain, automation, but what's next? It's like we're standing on the edge of something huge.
It's both exciting and a little bit, intimidating. where does a person even start?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The materials from RoleCatcher really drove home this point about digital literacy. It's not enough to just be comfortable with the tech we have now.
You've got to be ready for whatever's coming next.
Exactly. This field is evolving so fast. You need that adaptable mindset, that drive to constantly learn and grow alongside those new technologies.
It's not just about keeping up, it's about anticipating, right? Being ahead of the curve.
Right. Imagine a world where AI is predicting supply chain disruptions before they even happen, optimizing those shipping routes in real time, maybe even automating those complex trade negotiations. The possibilities are kind of mind-blowing.
A little bit sci-fi, but also kind of amazing.
And that's exactly why we do this deep dive. It's about empowering you, our listener. We want you to not just understand this career, but really envision yourself in it. We've laid it all out, the skills, the challenges, the incredible opportunities, especially with tech evolving at warp speed.
We've given you the ingredients, now it's time to cook up something amazing.
Exactly. What kind of future are you going to create in this industry?
Are you the one who masters those AI-powered logistics platforms, making global trade more efficient and sustainable than ever before?
Or maybe you're the trailblazer, the one who figures out how to use augmented reality to train a whole new generation of chemical handlers across the globe.
The possibilities are limitless. This isn't just about reacting to change. It's about driving it, shaping the future of how the world handles chemicals. What steps can you take today to make that happen?
What skills do you want to master? What knowledge gaps do you need to fill? Maybe you dive deep into blockchain, figuring out how to make that chemical supply chain even more transparent, more secure.
Or maybe you become a data analytics whiz, predicting global chemical demand before anyone else even sees it coming.
This is your chance to be creative, to combine your passion for international trade with this fascination for technology. Carve out your own space in this ever-changing world. It's been amazing exploring this with you. Who knew the world of chemical import-export could be so dynamic, so globally impactful?
We've uncovered the skills you need, the challenges you might face, and those incredible opportunities waiting for anyone brave enough to dive in.
And remember, the world of import-export, it never sits still. Technology will keep pushing those boundaries.
So embrace that change, keep learning, keep asking questions. Who knows, maybe one day we'll be doing a deep dive into your groundbreaking work in the chemical trade.
Until then, stay curious and keep on diving deep.